Imagine being only 13 years old, walking onto one of the biggest stages in the world, terrified, shaking, barely able to speak. The judges look at you with doubt in their eyes. The audience whispers, wondering if you'll crumble under the pressure. But then, you open your mouth, and within seconds the entire theater is on its feet, stunned by the raw, soulful voice of a legend reborn. That was Courtney Hadwin's unforgettable moment on America's Got Talent. But behind that viral golden buzzer moment, behind the standing ovations and headlines calling her the next Janis Joplin, lies a story that is far more heartbreaking than anyone realized. A story of a painfully shy girl who found her only escape in music, only to be swallowed by the unforgiving machine of fame, pressure, and criticism. Today, we uncover the untold, tragic life of Courtney Hadwin, the girl who won America's heart only to disappear into silence. From her quiet beginnings in a small English town to the overwhelming spotlight of AGT and the struggles that followed when the cameras turned off, this is the truth they didn't want you to know. Courtney Hadwin's story begins far from the flashing lights of Hollywood in the quiet village of Hesleden in County Durham, England. Born in 2004, she grew up in a working-class family where life was simple, grounded, and unremarkable on the surface. But underneath, Courtney was anything but ordinary. From a young age, she carried a secret that set her apart, a voice that seemed to come from another era, raw, soulful, and far beyond her years. Yet before anyone discovered her talent, Courtney was known mostly for something else: her shyness. At school, she wasn't the outgoing type. Teachers described her as timid, reluctant to speak up in class, and often lost in her own world. Peers saw her as quiet, maybe even withdrawn. For Courtney, crowds and attention were overwhelming. She struggled with the idea of being seen, let alone performing in front of others. The very thought of standing in front of her classmates was enough to send her into panic. But in the privacy of her bedroom, or in small moments at home with her family, something extraordinary happened. She would sing. And when she sang, the shy little girl disappeared. In her place was a powerful, commanding presence that no one expected from someone so reserved. Her inspirations were never the bubblegum pop stars of her generation. Instead, she gravitated toward the soul, rock, and blues voices of decades past: Janis Joplin, Otis Redding, James Brown. These artists resonated with her in a way few her age could even understand. It was her family who first recognized just how special Courtney was. Her parents encouraged her to pursue music, gently nudging her toward talent shows and local performances. At first, she resisted, crippled by stage fright, terrified of being judged. But little by little, she began to step out. She auditioned for school competitions and small local events, often shaking before going on stage. Yet every time she opened her mouth to sing, something magical happened. Audiences were stunned by the transformation. The girl who could barely whisper her name when introduced would suddenly belt out a song with the raw grit of a soul veteran. Courtney's early performances became local legends. Videos began to circulate online, and whispers spread beyond her hometown. People couldn't reconcile the image of a fragile, shy teenager with the explosive, seasoned sound that erupted when she sang. The contrast became her trademark, the quiet girl with the voice of a powerhouse. But this gift didn't come without struggles. Shyness wasn't something she could easily shed, even with music as her outlet. Each performance was a battle against her own anxiety. Friends and family recalled moments when Courtney would nearly back out of shows, consumed with nerves until the very last second. Her transformation on stage was almost like flipping a switch. It was as though music possessed her, giving her confidence she didn't have in her daily life. By the time she was 12, Courtney's reputation as a prodigy had begun to spread. She auditioned for The Voice Kids UK in 2017, where she made it to the finals and stunned judges with her rendition of Tina Turner's Nutbush City Limits. Though she didn't win, the performance cemented her as one of the brightest young talents in the country. For most kids, that kind of exposure would have been enough. But for Courtney, fate had much bigger plans. Behind all the early attention, though, Courtney remained deeply human, still shy, still struggling to navigate school, friends, and adolescence. Fame was never her goal. She wasn't chasing celebrity or recognition. She simply loved to sing. But the world was about to take her gift and put it under the harshest spotlight imaginable. When she set foot on the America's Got Talent stage in 2018, the world would finally meet Courtney Hadwin, not just the shy girl from Hesleden, but the phenomenon destined to both inspire and break hearts. In 2018, at just 13 years old, Courtney Hadwin walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent. For many watching, it seemed like any other audition, a shy teenager, visibly nervous, barely able to answer the judges' questions. Mel B, Howie Mandel, Heidi Klum, and Simon Cowell all tried to coax her into relaxing, but Courtney's trembling voice and awkward demeanor made it clear this was a girl absolutely terrified of the spotlight. The crowd didn't know what to expect. Some likely assumed she would stumble or falter, another example of nerves getting the better of a young hopeful. But the second the music began, everything changed. Courtney launched into Otis Redding's Hard to Handle, and the transformation was immediate and electric. The timid, almost invisible girl morphed into a powerhouse performer, channeling the raw energy of Janis Joplin with a raspy, soulful voice that belonged to someone far beyond her years. The room exploded. Audience members leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering as if they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Even the judges were stunned. Expressions of shock turned to wide smiles as Courtney worked the stage with confidence that seemed to come out of nowhere. This wasn't just talent, it was otherworldly. And then came the moment that would change Courtney's life forever. Howie Mandel, visibly moved and overwhelmed by what he had just seen, slammed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down. The crowd roared. And Courtney, overcome with emotion, stood frozen as tears filled her eyes. In that instant, she wasn't just a contestant. She was a phenomenon. Clips of the audition went viral almost instantly. Within hours, Courtney's performance was trending across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Headlines around the world declared her the next Janis Joplin, a rock star reincarnated, and a global sensation. Millions of people who had never heard her name were suddenly captivated by her story, the painfully shy English schoolgirl who stunned America with a single song. For Courtney, the experience was surreal. She later admitted she barely remembered the performance itself, describing it as an out-of-body experience. On stage, she felt consumed by the music, as though something inside her had taken control. To audiences, it looked like magic. But for Courtney, it was a survival mechanism, her way of channeling her fear into something powerful. As the competition continued, Courtney proved her talent was no fluke. Each round, she delivered electrifying performances of classic rock and soul anthems. Her renditions of James Brown's Papa's Got a Brand New Bag and Steppenwolf's Born to Be Wild left audiences in awe. Even Simon Cowell, famously hard to impress, called her a lion and praised her as one of the most extraordinary performers he'd ever seen. But with every standing ovation came mounting pressure. Courtney wasn't just competing in a talent show anymore. She had become a viral icon. Social media users dissected her every move. Some praised her as the future of music, while others criticized her style, her stage presence, or even her appearance. For a 13-year-old still struggling with shyness, it was overwhelming. When the finals came, Courtney gave everything she had. Her performance of Tina Turner's River Deep Mountain High brought the house down once again. And while she didn't win the competition, the title ultimately went to magician Shin Lim. Courtney had already secured something far more valuable: international fame, a record deal, and a fan base that believed she was destined for superstardom. After the show, she signed with Simon Cowell's Psycho Music and Arista Records with promises of a debut album and a career launch. For Courtney, this was the opportunity of a lifetime, the kind of break most aspiring singers could only dream of. But beneath the glittering confetti and worldwide headlines, cracks were already beginning to form. The same spotlight that lifted. Her up was about to expose her vulnerabilities, and the dream that began with the golden buzzer would soon turn into a battle she wasn't prepared for. For many, the golden buzzer moment on America's Got Talent was the beginning of what looked like a fairy tale. Courtney Hadwin was signed to a joint record deal with Simon Cowell's Psycho Music and Arista Records in late 2018, and the world assumed the path ahead was paved with Grammys, world tours, and chart-topping albums. But the truth is far more complicated and far more heartbreaking. Behind the headlines and viral videos, Courtney was still just a teenager, a shy girl from a small English town suddenly thrust into the brutal machinery of the global music industry. Fame had come too fast, too suddenly. She had gone from singing in her bedroom and small local stages to being analyzed, criticized, and dissected by millions of strangers across the world. For any adult, that kind of scrutiny is crushing. For a 13-year-old still figuring out who she was, it was devastating. Almost immediately, Courtney became a lightning rod for online debates. While many hailed her as a prodigy, others accused her of being a Janis Joplin copycat. Some cruel voices on social media mocked her stage presence, calling her movements awkward or bizarre. Others criticized her appearance, her accent, even her shyness during interviews. What should have been a celebration of her extraordinary talent quickly turned into a wave of judgment. The pressure didn't end there. Signing with a major label, especially one tied to Simon Cowell, came with its own set of expectations. Industry insiders revealed that Courtney was pushed to record songs that didn't always reflect her unique voice or artistic identity. The label wanted something marketable, something that would sell records and capitalize on her viral fame. But Courtney wasn't a polished pop star. She was a soul singer at heart, a rock-inspired powerhouse who drew her magic from authenticity. This clash between artistry and commercialism weighed heavily on her. Instead of being allowed to grow at her own pace, Courtney was thrust into meetings, rehearsals, and recording sessions designed to mold her into a marketable product. The result? A young girl caught in the middle of an industry tug-of-war, her creative spark dimming under the pressure of being told what kind of artist she should be. Even performing became a double-edged sword. Every time Courtney stepped on stage after AGT, the expectations were sky-high. Audiences wanted to see the viral sensation again and again, as though she could magically recreate that once-in-a-lifetime golden buzzer moment on demand. For Courtney, each performance became a test she felt she couldn't fail. The fun of singing, the joy of letting music flow through her, started to feel like an obligation, a job with impossible standards. And then came the silence. Months went by with little news of her album. Rumors began to circulate that the label didn't know how to market her. Industry executives, once dazzled by her viral moment, seemed unsure whether she was a short-lived novelty or a long-term star. Meanwhile, Courtney remained in limbo, working behind the scenes but rarely appearing in public. The girl who had once commanded global headlines was slowly fading from the spotlight. For Courtney personally, the toll was heavy. Friends and family described her as someone still deeply shy and sensitive, overwhelmed by the pressures of sudden stardom. The same girl who had once hidden behind her hair and trembled before speaking to the judges was now being asked to carry the weight of an entire music career on her shoulders. It was too much, too soon. Online, fans began to worry. Where was Courtney Hadwin? Why wasn't her album being released? Why had the Golden Buzzer star gone so quiet? For many, the silence spoke volumes. Fame had promised her the world, but instead, it had left her stranded, caught between her extraordinary gift and the crushing expectations that came with it. The harsh reality was becoming clear. Courtney Hadwin, the shy teenager with the once-in-a-generation voice, was learning the dark side of fame. What looked like a dream from the outside was, on the inside, a relentless struggle with anxiety, criticism, and an industry that didn't know what to do with her. And as the years passed, the tragic contrast between her Golden Buzzer glory and her fading presence grew sharper. The world had discovered Courtney Hadwin, but it wasn't ready to protect her. When the curtain fell on America's Got Talent, many assumed that Courtney Hadwin was destined for unstoppable greatness. After all, she had the voice, the charisma, and the viral fame that most artists could only dream of. But what happened next tells a very different story, one of silence, struggles, and the painful reality of growing up in the harsh glare of fame. For months after AGT, fans eagerly awaited her debut album. Courtney had signed a high-profile deal with Psycho Music and Arista Records, and the industry buzz suggested that she was being positioned as the next great breakout star. But delays plagued the project. Industry insiders whispered about creative differences, while others hinted that her management and label struggled to find the right image and sound to sell her. Was she a pop star? A rock revivalist? A blues powerhouse? The very uniqueness that had made her unforgettable on AGT now seemed to confuse the people charged with shaping her career. As time dragged on without a major release, the spotlight dimmed. Fans grew restless, demanding answers on social media. Where was Courtney? Why wasn't her career skyrocketing as everyone expected? The truth, however, was far more complex. Courtney was still just a teenager, and behind the scenes, she was, facing the crushing pressure of expectation. She had gone from being a schoolgirl in a small English town to a global sensation overnight. That kind of transformation doesn't just bring opportunity, it brings anxiety, isolation, and an enormous emotional burden. Adding to the struggle was the brutal world of online commentary. For every fan who adored her, there was a critic ready to tear her down. Some accused her of being overhyped, while others mocked her stage presence or accused her of copying Janis Joplin. For someone as shy and inward as Courtney, these criticisms cut deep. She wasn't a seasoned celebrity who could brush off the hate. She was a young girl still figuring out who she was. Every harsh comment chipped away at her confidence. Her performances, once filled with joy and spontaneity, began to feel weighed down by expectation. People no longer saw her as Courtney Hadwin, the teenager from County Durham. They saw her as the AGT Golden Buzzer girl, and they wanted her to deliver that same electrifying magic again and again. But music doesn't work that way. Artists grow, change, and experiment. Courtney wanted to explore her voice, but the industry wanted her to repeat herself. That tug of war only added to her stress. Then came the most heartbreaking twist. The silence grew longer. While she occasionally appeared on social media or performed in smaller venues, the big breakthrough everyone had expected never materialized. Instead, Courtney's career seemed stuck in a holding pattern. The label deal fizzled, and rumors swirled about her stepping back to regain control of her life and artistry. For Courtney, this pause may have been necessary. Fame had arrived too soon, too fast, and with too much pressure. Stepping away gave her time to breathe, to reflect, and to grow not just as a singer but as a person. Still, the disappointment was palpable, not only for fans but also for those who believed she had the potential to reshape the music industry. Looking back, Courtney's story is as much about the dangers of overnight fame as it is about talent. Reality TV shows like America's Got Talent can catapult ordinary people into stardom. but they rarely provide the support system needed to handle what comes next. For a young, sensitive artist like Courtney, the industry's failure to nurture her properly was devastating. And yet, despite all of this, her story is not over. Courtney Hadwin remains a voice unlike any other. Her raw power, her ability to channel decades of rock and soul into her teenage frame, is still unmatched. Fans who continue to follow her believe that one day when she's ready, she'll return stronger, more confident, and free from the industry pressures that once stifled her. For now, though, the silence speaks volumes. It's a reminder that behind every viral moment and every golden buzzer lies a real person, someone with fears, struggles, and dreams. Courtney Hadwin's journey shows us both the magic of extraordinary talent and the heartbreak of an industry that doesn't always know how to protect it. So the next time you watch that unforgettable AGT performance, the moment she transformed from a shy, trembling girl into a rock goddess before our eyes, remember the human being behind the voice, a girl who soared higher than anyone expected, only to be weighed down by the heavy cost of fame. And remember, too, that her story is still being written, because if Courtney Hadwin has proven anything, it's that her voice, once heard, can never truly be silenced.